Welcome, welcome, welcome everybody to another edition of Hot Program. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast. And as always, folks, I am in airplane mode. And now a man who thinks that if the Christian God is real, the Catholics are smarter than everyone else. Because asking a lady to have her son and baby daddy guilt them into doing things for you is a solid way of getting things done. A man who needs no introduction.
Hey, Pocket Locker. Good afternoon. How are you today?
Good afternoon. Are you gonna be doing one of them Cameron Bertuzzi why I'm a Catholic videos soon?
There's little to no chance of that. I think that the God of the Bible would have to reveal himself in an obvious way I've stated several times. Look, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time, have every child that's in a children's hospital around the world be miraculously healed permanently.
Yeah.
That'll make the news, right? That'll make the news. I'll know it probably by 10:30 that it happened.
It's
So,
it,
and then I'll believe.
it's funny that something so absurd, um, you know, to me it's just an obvious thing. Like there's some necessary cognitive dissonance because to anybody out there in the audience, you would do it. I think there's a
We
spectrum
all
of
would
us.
do
There's
it.
a spectrum. Yeah, some of us are really great people. Some of us are average people. Some of us are like technically gotta like have below average morality, right? But even those of us with like what's technically probably below average morality, we're like, yeah, if I was all powerful, if I could just like snap my fingers and heal all the children, even if just for like selfish reasons, just because like I want to be famous or I want to be in the news or and I could go viral or something. I don't know, make
Well,
up a
well,
reason, but most people would do it.
isn't it the right thing to do? I have submitted this on several occasions on the internet when talking with Christians. Look, it's cruel not to. It's
Right,
cruel if I
right,
have the power to let those people suffer. And it's no skin off my nose, right? I don't lose anything by healing those people. We read
right.
in the Bible that God, wants the glory for this or that prophets, priests, regular, everyday garden variety Hebrews are giving God the glory for the good things that occur in their life. Well, it's clear that God wants the glory, right? He's a jealous God. He doesn't even want you to worship other gods, except for that verse that says, "Thou shalt not revile the gods," which at least he wants you to respect them. But then there's a verse that says, "You should have any other gods before him," which means maybe there are other gods at the same time. Anyway, it's not confusing to say that God wants wants to enjoy glory,
Right,
Um,
right, and
so
that would give glory. That
that would
would
give glory, but the same God likes suffering. He demands, hey, kill these animals to sacrifice, like an adult bull, right? Kill that in
yeah.
my honor and burn the meat on the altar
All
because
right,
that'd
here's
be
what's here's
great.
what's interesting though. Total tangent, but this is why I think we should have socialism, because if we brought back like the like 90% marginal tax rate above a certain level or whatever, I actually think it would be better for everybody, including the billionaires. Because like right now, most of us, when I say billionaire, we have kind of a distaste in our mouth. Like, let's face it, billionaires are uber rich, but they're not necessarily uber popular. Like, we don't really get warm, fuzzy feelings inside when we think about billionaires. But if like literally the reasons we were like having like all this great health care and education and libraries, and we never drove over potholes, and all this stuff was just these billionaires. I think they get more glory. That's where it's going with it. Glory. I think there'd be more glory for them than there is now with them hoarding all of the wealth.
I'll share a personal story. This actually happened. So I was in the country of Georgia, so not the United States. I was in the one in Eastern Europe or Asia, depending on how you look at a map. And I was working over there, and I was asked to do a voiceover by someone whose mother was an inventor and a doctor. And I said, sure. They have this product she invented. They want to market it and start selling it all over the world. So I get the copy for it. I'm reading it, and I'm going, "Is this real?" He goes, "Yes, it's real." I said, "Do you have a video you can show me?" And he shows me a video of essentially what I'll be putting the words to. And he goes, "This is how it works, blah, blah, blah." And he goes over it. And I said, this is actually real. Like, it works. I'm not just doing this for a couple $100, you know. No, it's a real product that my mother invented. And I got kind of quiet. Let me tell you what it did. This was a piece of diagnostic equipment about the size of a microscope. Okay. I don't know if you can see both my hands, so my screen is low. About the size of a microscope. And it had a place for you to put one of your fingers on. And it had a readout display. When you put your finger on it, it would show you what was wrong in your body on the readout display. Visually, you would see it. And I'm watching this video going, how can this even be like a thing? It's real. And I says, okay, so tell me, how much would this sell for? About $5,000? Now, this is, when was this? 2009, I think it was, 2008, 2009, something like that. He goes, yes, it'd probably sell for about $5,000 US. Okay, let me tell you something. When I was in the hospital in Northridge, California, after I almost died in August of 2022, the scan for my heart that they gave me, right? The MRI or CT, whatever the heck that lady did, where she brought the portable machine into my room, got me all quiet and scanned me, was more than $1,600.
Yeah, it's expensive.
If there's a machine the size of a microscope that can do the same job faster and is less expensive by far, I'm assuming that machine they use is about 75 grand to do my scan. You make your money back pretty much the first week you own that machine, by the way.
Yeah, but you know what? This sounds like the I don't think there is. It sounds like that scheme that lady got caught up in.
Well, let me finish.
You know what I'm talking about, though?
The blood scanning thing, the blood lady.
I think
where she
so.
had,
yeah.
I forget the name of her company, Theranos or something like that.
Yeah.
Theranos
Okay,
or
you know what
something.
I'm talking about. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
So I didn't tell this lady's son, again, a completely serious person. I didn't tell him, your mom, if this is true, your mom is going to be extremely rich and I'll never see this again. I'll never see this again. Think of the infrastructure that comes down, that right, it disappears. General Electric isn't making MRI machines anymore if this thing is real.
Right.
Those machines are over $1 million, if I remember correctly. She's selling this, she wants to sell it for $5 grand. There's no way. There's no way they're giving up all that profit. I bet you GE probably makes $250,000 off that machine, if a penny. And they sell them to any hospital. You open a hospital, one of those is going in. Guaranteed. At least one, right? If you're a big outfit like UCLA, you might have more than one.
Right.
So just the financial impact of innovation, and this happens again and again, not just in American society, but all over the world. The financial impact of some innovations is so crippling that the product may take decades or never reach the marketplace
That's terrible.
because it's too disruptive. Now, it's our mindset is wrong. What if this woman's innovation was celebrated instead? Instead of saying, oh, shoot, we're going to lose, I'm guessing here, $250,000 profit times 600 this year because this MRI machine is no longer necessary. We sell about 600 a year. Now we're not going to sell any because they're just going to pay $5,000 for this. And rich people will have them at home, right? Your son or daughter gets sick. Come here, honey, and you put their finger on it. Okay, they can send it to the doctor. Here's what the scan said. Okay, do this, this, and this. Or the machine tells you to do this, this, or this. It's going to be that way in the future. But financially, people don't want to make the jump because human beings are messed up in that way. It would be better if we all said, you know what, there is now a better way and we can accept it. Let's do things the better way. Sure, some people will lose their jobs, right? They don't sell a lot of buggy whips anymore. My marketing professors would use that as an example. We don't sell a lot of buggy whips anymore because few people drive buggies. Most people drive cars, or they take the bus.
Right.
You don't need a buggy whip for your horse, So I think we have to understand that these impacts would be profound. Here in California, they want to push electric cars, but the grid can't support an electric car. Your house, the average person's house, my neighbors have solar, several of them do. I think if I took 5 neighbors and combined all the electricity they put in the day, they generate in the day, they couldn't charge a Tesla Plaid. With all of their collective energy that they charge up in a day into their batteries, they couldn't do it because it requires so much energy to charge that thing. That's not bad. That's not a problem, but it's just where we are with technology. Publicly, we don't have solar that's so sophisticated that it could give you 85 kilowatts in a day. We're just not there yet. Did someone invent it? Maybe, I don't know. But it's not on my neighbor's roof, right?
Yeah, I mean they're definitely able, I think, to charge these vehicles. We just need the infrastructure. But all right, let's get into our talk for today. We've got a talk here to get through. All right, so this is actually a throwback from, I believe, from Recovering from Religion. And it is an award they gave to a young lady named Nadia Duncan. And the title of this talk is Unapologetic Black Atheist. Oh, wait, hang on. I think, did I?
Yeah, I couldn't hear her just
I had something muted. There we go.
Nadia Duncan, our student awardee this year. Nadia won the Michael Hakim Memorial Student Essay Prize, first place, in the Freedom from Religion Foundation's College Essay Contest for Freethinkers of Color. This year, FFRF has given about $40,000 overall to several dozen students in our 4 essay contests. The executive board of FFRF has now created a new award endowed by David Hudak to begin next year, focusing on essays by students of color, making this a permanent essay contest for FFRF. You would have caught and remembered her essay, Why I Am an Unapologetic Black Atheist, in the September issue of Free Thought Today. Nadia is 18, has a birthday coming up in November, is from Vienna, Virginia, and is already a sophomore at SUNY Purchase College. Her interests include singing, acting, dance, creative writing, historical, and not so historical reading. Her mother is also here today. Given the title of your essay, Nadia, FFRF has a plaque for you, recognizing you as an out-of-the-closet atheist. Please welcome Nadia Duncan.
the one thing real quick is interesting is first off, I think all of us that are out of the closet atheists deserve plaques. but no, it's just interesting. I was thinking about this earlier when I made the question of the day. Do you feel atheists are marginalized? To me, that is the answer to the question. The answer to the question is if you have to come out about something, if you have to come out of the closet about something, then by definition it's marginalized, because otherwise you wouldn't be afraid to share it, right? Or to
Right?
reveal it, you know? So, but yeah, kudos to her.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Thank you so
And she got the
much.
blue hair going. Who's she ever, though?
Hello. First of all, I would like to formally thank you all for this honor. Thank you to the current co-presidents of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, Dan Barker and Annie Laurie Gaylor, for your tireless efforts in the courtroom, in your community, and across the country to defend free thought and the constitutional edict of the separation of church and state. Thank you. Because of your work, we are able to live in a more just and free-thinking America. And thank you to my mother, Themby Duncan, who is here with me today. Without her constantly prodding me to pen and submit this essay, I would not be standing here today. I used to call myself a soft agnostic. It was a term that I coined to try and be as inoffensive as possible in my hometown of Vienna, Virginia, while still remaining honest about my unenthusiastic attitude towards organized religious practice. People hear the word atheist and they recoil as if it describes some sort of violent, dangerous iconoclast. But agnostic sounds tame. People hear agnostic and they think, there's still hope for her. There isn't. I've grown tired of being inoffensive. Therefore, I have claimed a new title, Unapologetic Black Atheist.
All right, y'all. I
was gonna say
gotta
pause
be
it.
the bad guy. I gotta be the bad guy and pause the young lady. I know it's terrible. I don't feel good about it today, but it's what the show requires of me. Go ahead, my one black friend.
All right. There's several ways of approaching insulting others. Not that you should. I'm getting a little worn down by the nastiness I see on the internet. When we deal with, and maybe she comes to this in her speech. When we deal with people who have a differing opinion, regardless of what it is, if we think they're wrong, one of the easiest things to say is, obviously, we won't agree. And that's fine. Another thing I say is the comments section is not, of YouTube. The comments section of Instagram, especially Instagram, is not the place to have a lengthy discussion about this. Maybe you want to write to that person extensively, with their email address or in a private message, but not in the comment section. You can also, something I've been saying lately, because the whole Democratic Republican thing with Biden and Trump is so nasty now. It's so divisive. I've started to simply write, so this is what our country has become. We can't wait to tear each other down. Right? So that's not just online. That's now out in the street too. That's in the cafes. It's in the restaurants. It's in the bars. The nastiness. And it's sickening because it didn't used to be so bad. It probably was always there. I won't say it wasn't, but it wasn't so bad. With religion, I think I shared this on Hot Program once. Somebody said, like, thank God for this or that, this older couple ahead of me. And I said, oh, I'm an atheist. And the woman hit me. She went, nobody's an atheist. I was like, did you just hit me? Yes. Not everybody believes in a God. There are plenty of atheists. So I think the thing for us to remember is now she's an old woman, not forcefully punching me or whatever, but there are people who will. There are people whose identity and redemption from drugs or alcohol or whatever it was, right, is so tied to that whole Jesus deal being real or the whole God thing being real that they will come to blows.
Jesus
You'll bring it.
Christ! Jesus Christ!
Yeah, Mike Sermon,
The dancer, the
the
dancer, kid.
dancer.
So I come
You
at
gotta
these.
play a clip of him if you can. Play a clip of him for our
Oh, if I
audience
can
so they
find
know who
them.
we're
All
talking
right.
about.
So I come at these a little bit differently. So for me,
Mhm.
the comment section, at least for a lot of us here, I don't know, like I felt like that's how I started to like meaningfully engage with the people in this community. Like that's how I started making friends on YouTube was
Well,
like
it's okay.
meaningful exchanges in the comment section. And I also think
Mhm.
that there is a space there for it to happen for the benefit of the class, so to speak, right? In the sense that by having these conversations on Reddit, on Discord, in a comment section or whatever, that it's public, right? And so it's a different conversation, but I do think the public value is worth mentioning. As far as the divisiveness stuff, like a couple things I realized. So one, some of us are just like that. Like some of like I've been listening to Mr. Anderson. I gotta get back to this clip, but Mr. Anderson talking about spectacle debates, and a lot of people denigrate them, like, but other people just like them, right? And it's okay for
Mhm.
people to just be, like some people like boxing, some people don't, right? But some people are just into the sparring and the combativeness of it all. But also, I think for a lot of us, like that's where we're at. Like when I'm honest about it, like there's no giving me about so many of these things. And I think rather than it being this thing of how do we get this divisive, or like why are we so antagonistic towards each other, I think for me at least, I've come to accept that that's where we're at. Like if you got 35% of the population over here saying I don't want nothing to do with the other side, you got another 35% of the population over here say I don't want nothing to do with the other side. The people that are in the middle, at some point, it's like, when are y'all gonna realize this is how it is? Like this is just where we're at. And I think we're really like that. Like me and these people who are anti-DEI. As soon as you're anti-DEI, to me, you're like racist and bigoted and probably anti-LGBTQ, because that's how it is right now. Like we're dealing with that. Like we're dealing with real class warfare. Really, those of us that thought COVID was one of the worst things we'll ever have to live through, versus those who thought a vaccine mandate would be the worst thing we had to live through. Like that. Like we're not, again, we're still I'm an evolutionary biologist who's literally like in a society filled with creationists, right? There's just certain things, it's like, so I've come around to understand that these are legitimate conflicts, and as much as we might like aesthetically or optimistically to be able to find common ground, it's just hard. There's just things, I think it's really hard to find common ground on.
Well, often the common ground won't be expressed in the comment section. Do you say anything? Well, I guess we all do to some degree. You might say something if you do agree and you want to be supportive of the points, but what gains controversy is often the disagreement and the way you disagree. So I put a comment on some video, I mentioned this before in Hot Program, about some guy showing polarized lenses down in Florida, where you could see there's a alligator in the water when you use polarized lenses, but the thing basically disappeared because it's camouflaged so well without them. And I put a simple comment like, "Thank you for this demonstration of how valuable polarized lenses are and what they do. I wondered for years why they were a big deal." Almost nine. This is from like 3 months ago, almost 90,000 people have liked that comment. A simple thank you with an explanation of why I'm so grateful that this little short video on Instagram explained this thing. Almost 90,000 people. The second most liked comment I've had on Instagram is probably like 600 people.
I think that's part of it though, right? Part of what people are dealing with is, again, like I said, aesthetically and rhetorically, we've been conditioned to like that. We've been conditioned to want compromise and find middle ground and make America purple again. And that's cool. I'm glad that that's what, you know, people are into, but I think for a lot of people, like we're in pretty severe times, I'd call them. And it's just hard, right? There's just like there's a lot. I mean, yeah, like I just don't. For me, finding compromise requires common values and common goals. If we don't have common values and common goals, we're fundamentally working towards different things. And compromising with somebody who's working towards something that's, at least from your perspective, antagonistic towards your goals, objectives, and values, that's a loss. There's no way around that. So I think a lot of times what we're trying to do is renegotiate that. Like I think we're like skip that sometimes. Like sometimes we go to like, how can we, you know, like what's the policy prescription that we can compromise on, or like, you know, what can't we all just get along? And it's like, first we've got to identify the same values. And that's because that's where a lot of the issue is for me, right? I literally don't feel safe with people who I disagree with anymore. Like
that's understandable.
And so it's yeah, it can be hard. All right, I want to go to her, but but if you want to respond to that, I want you to be able to.
Well, I think we all need to get the idea that we rarely want a single thing. It's often a list of things that we want to see, or that we want to change. It's rarely just one thing when dealing with society. So we have to understand that maybe the people we hire, our representatives, or the council we join, you're not going to get everything done on that list, more than likely. But if you can make a little progress to make the world a better place as far as you see it, okay. Look at the people who wanted abortion to be illegal. How carefully they planned that attack on people's rights.
Right.
And they were playing the long game, right? I'll say this. I have to say it because I'm getting closer to running for office, I think. I would say, if I were president of the United States, all right, we're going to take a vote this November, and you have to identify yourself for this, because we're going to see if we're going to make abortion. If you want to discourage abortion and make it illegal, I want you to vote this particular way. And if you don't, vote the opposite. Here's why. Everybody who wants abortion to be illegal, we're all of us, including me, because I would like it to be illegal. Well, I don't think women should have abortions, except for like if the mother's life is in danger. But I will never take away the right for it. I would never do that. So I'm going to say, okay, all of us, we're going to have to pay higher taxes. We're going to pay 5% more in taxes, because that all these children that these women were going to abort, they're not going to have, and we're going to pay for it. The people who didn't want it, who wanted those women to have their rights, they don't have to, but the rest of us have to. You can change your mind in 18 years, but for the next 18 years, you will pay 5% that you can't get out of. You can't throw any deduction at it. You're just stuck paying it. And then 18 years, if you still feel that way, you can vote again. We'll charge you another 18 years worth, but you can't weasel out of it. You can't say it's I want to control what she does, and she made a bad decision, and the man made a bad decision, and now there's a baby on the way, and it's not right for them to get rid of it. If there are consequences for them and not consequences for you, you're looking at the problem in the most convenient way possible. But then again, everybody in the example is.
This is all just insane, right? Obviously, relative to just giving people their bodily autonomy.
Yeah, I don't think I have a right to tell someone else what to do in that respect. I don't.
Sure.
And no one else is. Not. My baby isn't born yet, but essentially there are those who would say, well, you're a father now, you got to start thinking of things differently. Weirdly, my mind didn't change when my wife took the third or fourth pregnancy test to verify that we had a kid on the way. It didn't change. I still don't think I have the authority to tell someone else. Now, what I have done in my life, this is off topic, sorry. I've told 3 different friends of mine who got pregnant and wanted abortions that I'll adopt your baby. If you carry the baby to term, I will pay every bill and I will adopt the baby. And I also told them, you can see the baby whenever you want.
You should make sure that's not an effort to coax someone out of an abortion that they want, though, right? Like,
well, look at it in a way, Pocket Locker, maybe it was, because one, I didn't have children of my own and I was willing to adopt children. And these were people I knew. And if they had changed their mind, at some point, that would have been very hard. In fact, that did happen. A friend of mine was going to have twins and I told her I adopted kids. So she said yes. And then she went to Germany and had an abortion anyway.
Yeah, and I just think that's like, you got to make sure that you're not coercing. There's a difference between somebody who wants to have a kid and thinks you can't, but I don't know. I'm pro-abortion.
No, you're probably right.
Yeah. So the other thing is this is an interesting case too, because this is where compromise seems to, in many ways, to me, never favor the left. And I think it comes down to a couple fundamental reasons. One, I think I literally think we're in a reality versus anti-reality situation, and without getting too much into that, I just want people to understand that that's where I'm coming from, right? And if that's the case, right, then number one, they're always more willing to be dishonest. They literally decide that represents dishonesty. So for instance, like the abortion thing is one where, since the left, who wants to be reasonable people and wants to compromise and be reasonable and all this other stuff, what did we do? We literally let them sit up there and tell us, as they elected conservative judges, who, by the way, were picked by but let's tell the whole story. They were picked by political organizations dedicated to ending abortion rights. They were literally handpicked for that single issue, right? They had religious and personal and political commitments to that single issue. And we let them sit up there and tell us, well, it's established precedent and we're never going to do anything about it. And it's just the way the law is. And we're just going to have to live with it and deal with it and da-da-da-da. And they lied through their teeth. And so, but not just that, even genuine compromise favors them, because like something like I think of as just being like, like a push towards racial equality and people who clearly want white supremacy. Anything between those two things is beneficial to them. It's less than our it's more, it's more than they should have, right? So even genuine compromise is better for them because they're coming from a worse position. So that's just kind of things I've been thinking
I
about
want
lately.
you to know, I want you in the audience to understand the strength of what you're saying. We can agree equality is the right thing to do, but it's getting the person who doesn't want equality to admit that is the right thing to do, and then making sure you call them on it when the next thing out of their mouth is why they want preferential treatment.
Right.
You gotta call them on it. Growing up, affirmative action was a big thing, and I was a kid. I learned about it, and I thought, no, that's kind of unfair. Well, my father pointed out things were unfair for us. And what this affirmative action is doing, it's leveling the playing field. And in a way, it is introducing those who were excluded, right, into the game,
Yes.
if you will. And it's showing what its purpose is. Maybe it's not the intended purpose, but what my father was expressing, what is going to happen is that people are going to see there was never a good reason for discrimination. And that's going to lead to a better world, a better country.
Yeah, and we lost that. And people have to remember that you have to, right? Because if you don't do it, they would still be excluding people, right? Like people,
but it's done now. To your point, it's being done now. We know it is. Trans people taking the hit. We see people of color still taking the hit. Gay people still taking the hit and getting excluded. And
women still taking the hits. Still like an equal pay.
Women, oh my gosh, yeah, and people with whatever ethnic sounding names taking the hit. You know, it's an odd thing that people are so uncomfortable, and to the point where they have to discriminate.
Absolutely.
Because to me, that doesn't say that you are more powerful than everybody else. You are more fearful than everyone else. And you're simply, or you or your team or whatever, are simply better at getting the laws to what? Give you aid and comfort that you will easily deny. Aid and comfort that allows you to deny equality to others.
Yeah, and that's what them same compromise candidates turned around and repealed affirmative action. All right, let's let the star get back to it, I guess. Cheers, everyone. Glad you're hanging with us. So good to have you.
I am so grateful that the Freedom from Religion Foundation recognizes the specific challenges that come with being a free-thinking person of color. For some think that we cannot live a life free of religion due to our ethnic heritage. This is narrow-minded and uninformed. It is a myth, in the words of our co-founder, Annie Laurie. The belief that people of color have to take shelter in the arms of organized religion because of the plight of racial oppression is one that stems from fear and a desire to assimilate. In my research for this speech, I stumbled upon a quote from a book called Christianity in Africa and the African Diaspora, The Appropriation of a Scattered Heritage by Adogame, Gerloff, and Hawk. It reads, "The rapid development of African Christianity and its offshoots in the diaspora is rooted in colonial history and resistance to oppression, exploitation, and slavery." This notion gave me pause. How could the very religion that was forced upon a people whose native traditions were stripped away from them be used as resistance to the very same oppressor? As it turns out, these writers' answer was that the enslaved Africans embraced whichever of the various denominations of Christianity that their slaveholders belonged to. They found solace in the promise of heavenly salvation after the horrors of their earthly existence were over. Although I only have the experience of a Black American woman in the 21st century, that explanation does not sit right with me at all.
All right, so she's gonna take us to a turn here. So I want to get your thoughts on that idea that that the slaves took to Christianity and its promises and this whole deal.
Well, lots of people who weren't even slaves, I guess, if we want to just make it a more blanket term, and I'll start with the specific, but let's broaden it. So specifically, people being ripped away from their culture in Africa and being or wherever, right? And being brought here and enslaved, they have to learn a new language. Their routine is interrupted. It's statistically unlikely they will ever see the family that they're from ever again. The world has come crashing down. And there is severe psychological damage that is now done to that person. Did some people take it in stride? I'm sure some people did. And those are statistically remarkable individuals. Most people probably had an exceedingly hard time with that transition. And now you're being told where to go, what to do. Your entire life is essentially planned out by someone else. And yes, you get a few hours of free time every day, just enough to be tired, right? That's your chief activity during that time, being tired.
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. So to then take that person and indoctrinate them with hope that this is going to be over someday. They saw older family members die, maybe a few younger family members die, maybe people on the slave ship die. And that person is released from all toil. Now that might have been what they expected if they didn't have a supernatural belief of some kind of reincarnation or afterlife. But now you're telling them this Jesus fellow lives up in the sky, and it is a blissful place with no suffering. There's endless happiness. There's eternal joy and reverence and the power of being in the presence of the Almighty. And there are no more chains on your neck. There are no more chains on your wrist. You can run freely through the fields of heaven, cloaked in joy and gladness and salvation. Amen. Well, shoot, that's way better than what we have going on down here. So sign me up for the Christian Jubilee. If you can get them to believe that, there's something to look forward to at the end of the day, thinking about that. When you're picking the cotton, right? This must be soft like a cloud must be soft. And one day I'll be up there in heaven reclining right next to Jesus, white Jesus, having a lovely time. Sure, that's probably not true, but you can think it is. If that's the hope you give that person, and they begin to believe it generation after generation after generation, and you do your level best as a slave master to make the world around them cruel. They can't get a break. If they build something up, you tear it down because you want complete control over that individual. You sell their children. They're not allowed to truly enjoy their life. So they hold on. It makes the Christian hope, right? It makes that hope stronger because it's the only thing you don't try to take away from them. That's all they have. Tomorrow isn't theirs. You own them. Their tomorrow is your tomorrow, and you decide what they do with their time.
So,
Now, wait. Well, go ahead.
no, you're fine.
Okay, so now you take the drug addict who wants to be free. You take the person who's addicted to whatever substance, and they want to be free. And those substances may dictate their health, their lifestyle, their limitations. And if believing that this Jesus fellow and this God fellow will get them off of that, or even praying to Mary and having her get them to do stuff for you, if that gets you free, that's the chief value of your life, is the restoration of authentically being yourself, done through the process of becoming a believer in this or that faith.
So that's the key point you said there, authentic, and to me it's not authentic. And even in the case, somebody mentioned this in the chat, but even in the case of the believer, they're robbed of the very power of their own struggle. They literally
Agreed.
have overcome this addiction, and they cannot even accept the credit of the strength that they've managed to find.
Oh, God gave it to them, right?
yeah,
When they
yeah,
share your testimony with the congregation.
yeah. Now
It is through the power of God, Satan Kate, that David, whatever the guy that tried to kill his dad by hitting him in the head with a hammer, whatever his name was, that's it. It's the almighty restorational, transformational power of God.
now with regard to slavery, I don't think this is a topic people take seriously. But for Black folks, I've always wanted them to notice that it's never mattered. That first off, nothing about them being Christian stopped them from enslaving our ancestors. Nothing.
In fact, one of the popes, I think it was Leo, I forget which pope it was, one of the popes signed off on it.
Yeah,
And made the African slave trade possible, basically. Rubber stamped it.
And yeah, and then even when it was supposed to be forbidden to enslave somebody was a Christian, and Black people made themselves Christian, they changed who you could enslave based on race, which was their original intention all along. So that needs to be stated, and that's happened all throughout, right? That being Christian didn't stop them from oppressing us at any step of the way. And it's really painful to me that people don't realize that. It's really painful that we're so dishonest. It's also really painful to me that there's no acceptance of that reality in the dominant white culture. It's never accepted that Christianity is something they enforced on slaves, and to expect the descendants of those slaves to be honest, to be comfortable still living under it. It's just, the whole thing is like really, really messed up. And I also think there's a way in which the people back then may have had to go along with it for their survival. But I think a lot of them were wise enough, especially if they were loyal to other traditions, that they didn't necessarily believe it so much as they thought they had to become Christian. And the irony is not lost on me now that we have ostensibly legally free Black people who choose to who actually believe it seriously, right? So you had enslaved Black people who at least were smart enough to like not believe the dumb shit master's forcing upon you. Now supposedly you're free, but you actually believe this foolishness.
Well, look, if you free the slave, you can charge him rent.
Of course.
If he stays on your plantation. I'll say the average modern day Anglo-Saxon or Caucasian white person had nothing to do with the slavery of my great grandmother. Right? Their parents had nothing to do with it. The average one. There are some, when you get to people in their 90s and that are over 100 years old, their grandparents might have owned slaves.
Right. And
right?
they benefit from it, right? That's the problem.
Let me just go on. In the United States, this is a unique country in some respects. We have people who immigrated here from Poland, from Scotland, from Estonia, and so on and so on. People from all around the world in the 1920s, in the late 1800s, who never had slaves. When they got here, slavery was abolished. So they might have met people who used to be slaves. They might have met slave owners, but they didn't have any participation in it at all. And that's something we all need to keep in mind. There's a lot of people who are second, third generation Americans living in this country. And so thankfully, their ancestors missed out entirely on being part of a system that supported slavery, right? So they're looking at, your comment going, well, you can't blame me for that. I didn't have anything to do with that. and they're right. They didn't. And if they enter a system that is oppressive to the children and children of former slaves and former slaves, they didn't create that system. They walked into it. Now, what they can do is unknowingly participate in perpetuating the oppression. I would assume most of them have they have no desire to do that at all.
But this is the thing. This is the thing. Like, first off, what I'm saying is it's the tradition and it's the and you gain access to that. So I'm not saying they did personally, but what I'm saying is their religion was used in that way. And you have to get to a point where you're honest about that history, and you have to recognize that. And that's going to make it difficult to celebrate, especially when it's not true. There's a certain way in which you have to be accountable for the fact that still to this day, people are being held back by this dogma, and it was forced upon them as slaves. If you're people having nothing to them not being the ones to do it has nothing to do with being honest about the history of the church's role in people's enslavement. And further, there needs to be an accountability to the point of how could this faith be how could this be it? How could it be true? How could there be an all-loving God if literally this was forced upon people? It's just that's what I'm saying. I'm saying they're not serious about it. And because they're not serious about it, there's a way in which they don't, it's like they don't care. It's like they don't and again, it ties back into this other thing, which is the one of the new dog whistles. I shouldn't say new dog whistles, but one of the constant dog whistles of racism is to blame Black culture for problems that Black people are having or within the Black community. And what I'm saying is part of what the problem is in Black culture, the problems that are really in Black culture are the results of colonialism and results of like Black oppression, and Christianity's play a role in that. And I just feel like to think that we can move beyond that without, it's tough. It's tough.
I want to read something to you. Now, unlike Trump, I'm not going to say this is the whole ball game. It's not the whole ball game. We're in 1 Corinthians 3:18-20. This is what Christians are told, right? This, and I don't care what color you are, this is what you are told in church. How people will mentally address your comment, Jay, even though I can agree with you that there's an issue there that needs to be resolved, because it is effing sad that people believe this stuff so much, right? We have no historical evidence that Bushes have ever spoken.
Yeah. Also, if they went there, I would also say they do have a role to play in it. They may not like it, they may not be comfortable with it, but it's not necessarily that they directed it, or that, of course, I mean, that's a historical obvious, like they weren't alive, so how could they, right? But what a lot of them did is they immigrated from places in the world where they were marginalized, where they were oppressed, and they came here seeking better opportunity, which is fine.
You see it in Israel right now.
That's fine. But in order to do so, they tapped into the white supremacy that was here. And that system was built on slavery, and it was built on segregation. And most of them came here, and a lot of them came here, right? And when they came, they were immigrants, and they were mistreated, and they had to form their own communities and enclaves. But as things progressed and political things changed, there was a lot of unity built around, hey, oh, you know what, y'all, right? And so it's weird because even now, like they're white passing people, and they get tapped into the white privilege. And I know that that's not something they necessarily chose, but again, it's something that if we're gonna be serious about making a more equitable world, you would acknowledge. Nobody's trying to make you feel bad, but we're trying to say, can you acknowledge it? And then from there, like, and it just, and that's why it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen because people would have to, they'd have to acknowledge that it's wrong, right? They'd have to acknowledge that these people were lied to, they were manipulated, and that even now, like, it's still harming our people. And so in order to be honest about this, they'd have to admit that they lied to us about Jesus. And I just don't think that's ever going to happen.
Let me read these verses here. 1 Corinthians 3:18 through 20. Let no man deceive himself. If any man among you seemeth to be wise in this world, let him become a fool that he may be wise. For the wisdom of this world is foolishness with God. For it is written, he taketh the wise in their own craftiness. And again, the Lord knoweth the thoughts of the wise, that they are vain. So this is programming 101. Programming 101. Basically saying, yeah, that guy is smart because he doesn't accept what we accept in our in-group. He's intelligent, sure, but that's for the world. Compared to God, he's not that intelligent. And you'll see, you stick with us, God will make what that guy does seem kind of stupid.
And this goes back to why we can't have compromise, right? Because again, because I believe that, and I think, and to be honest, that's where they go, right? That's one of the foundational passages for God works in mysterious ways. That's incredibly anti-human. For most of us, the human history is this struggle of how we've clawed a better material existence from nature, right? We've progressed from fire to farming to pharmaceuticals, right? They're literally telling us they literally have a thing in them that tells us what's smart is dumb and what's dumb is smart.
Yeah.
We ain't, for us, what's smart is smart. I literally thought about this. Like, part of what I feel as a Black atheist, especially a Black atheist who found atheism in a genuine quest for truth, like a genuine education, right? As the result of an educational process, right? I wasn't just born an atheist. I had to like learn about the world in a way to get the tools and the resources to evaluate the religion to leave. It took becoming smarter. I feel like a pressure where basically it's like, well, a lot of the believers don't have the benefits of that educational process. And so then there's this pressure to like go along with them. There's literally this pressure to like, and when I think about it, the phrase I had in my head was literally, and this is going to sound conceited, but seriously, it's like, do we think it's better to tell the educated people to go along with the uneducated approach, or to tell the uneducated people you should probably take the educated approach? We know what the answer is. We all know how to answer that question. But when it comes to religion, we start throwing all sorts of other considerations in the pot, all sorts of other considerations.
Right, we make all these concessions. Yeah. I watched the video about imaginary friends, and I placed a simple comment. The person was saying, like, to some degree, this is very healthy, and your child can have an imaginary friend, and this is considered, fairly normal, and your child will grow out of it. My simple comment was this: how does this relate to religion? The simple, no response yet, but the idea that someone has spoken with God and God spoke. I stated, in previous posts. This subject has been fascinating me now that I have a baby on the way. Imaginary friends have jobs, families, siblings, money, solutions, problems, and they're sitting at the dinner table right now, right next to you. Or can you, a child will ask a parent, can you please set a place for Mrs.
Yeah,
Bigglesworth?
yeah,
Can
yeah.
you sit it? And it sure seems sincere. It sure seems genuine. And it may even be rather sweet of you to play along.
I had imaginary siblings growing up. I had imaginary twin brothers,
Their names were
Johnny and Gray.
Johnny and Gray.
Yeah.
Okay.
Johnny was basically the good pixie and Gray was the bad pixie. But at the time they were like, we were triplets, I guess you would say, in my imagination. But yeah, but they were imaginary, yeah.
Well, again, you'll get. I'm not gonna rain on your parade. I think if you want to go on about that topic, please.
No,
I think it's fascinating. But
let me
ask you
this: I wonder if they were pre-bipolar, right? Because I'd always feel like Johnny was the good influence, right? And in some way was like influencing me when I did good things as a kid, like when I was a good kid, and then Gray was like trying to make me a bad kid. So I was like this early.
Okay, well, let me ask you: when you believed in God, how was God similar to your imaginary friends? If you can think about it that quickly right now,
Probably probably not. Like, I don't know, maybe just in the sense of clearly I was accepting of like entire imaginary realms, but you know, they were just people. And then, I want to speed run these questions from RU real quick.
Okay.
And we'll have to be quick, but question number 1: if Christianity was true, would you believe it? I think that's I would say yes, obviously. And here's the bigger problem. The bigger problem is that Christians don't care if it's not true.
Oh, not all, but
yeah.
large, significant numbers do not care. Do not care.
Yeah, if it was true and you wouldn't believe it, why? That doesn't even I think that's actually a nonsensical question, for at least for skeptical people.
Maybe are you left out a word or something like that?
If you know it is true, but you don't agree with the morals on the Bible, was Hitler correct to do what he did? No, this is just control craziness.
Well, hold on, let's see. Well,
because he's going on all these Hitler questions.
I have a browser open. I typically will say about Hitler, oh, you can be sure his dog liked him very much.
So here's the question: why do you guys talk about this? Why is this a Christian conversation?
Question number 3. Where's question number 1? If Christianity was true, would you believe it? So, okay, I'll answer your question.
But can we speed run this, because I don't think this is a genuine person.
Yes. So if Christianity puts forth a lot of beliefs, right? I'm supposed to believe that there'll be a new heaven and a new earth, and we'll see a new Jerusalem descending from the sky. I'm supposed to believe Mark chapter 16 through 18, where if I'm a Christian and I follow Jesus, I'm supposed to have magical healing powers. Well, I did follow Jesus for a while, and I never got those powers. But if it were true, what a wonderful thing! And I'd have to believe that was real, because I literally could do it. If I ever stopped believing or stop following Jesus, that power would go away, which would, that would be a confirmation that it is real. Yeah. I would know from my own hands, right? Me trying to walk around healing people to make sure. This is what I mean about Christians.
This is what I mean about Christians not caring. My grandfather is a bishop, and my grandmother's the first lady of the church, Pentecostal. Christianity is their personality. They are dying. They had to be put in a nursing home. My mom can't take care of them enough. They're dying. They've dedicated their whole life to Jesus, visiting the sick, donating to the poor, in church all week. don't you think if the promises of God were real and they could anoint each other and heal each other, they'd do it? These are people that dedicated their entire lives to God, and they don't have it.
And wouldn't that be glorious?
Wouldn't that be
If
glorious?
it were that simple?
But that's what I mean.
Wouldn't God
they don't take it seriously.
God would be up in heaven. Hey, everybody, another one for me. Take that, Satan. Yeah, he could go on and on and on and do that. So, are you, question number 2? If it was true and you wouldn't believe it, why? Okay. So I think writing questions can be difficult. I don't think you got to express yourself here fully.
Don't buy
So,
that. This is just
well,
this is just a troll.
because I've had to ask questions like this, and sometimes it doesn't come out the way you want it
Sure,
to.
but you assume
So-
people are as
so-
nice as you are, or as genuine as you are.
I do. Talk about not seeing it the way you should. So are you? Let's. I have to make an assumption here based on the way your question is phrased. So, with the assumption that Jesus Christ was a real individual that walked the earth and had the powers as stated, as in the Bible. Now, should I believe that God is worthy of worship as a result of that? I think you're trying to ask that question. Why wouldn't I? So I've read the Old Testament. The God of the Bible is utterly cruel, right? He murdered all the 8 people on the planet. He commands genocide, right? Kill the Amalekites, like utterly, put them to the sword, slay old and young. He ordered that, right? I have no reverence for being that way, regardless of how powerful they are. Because if you are right in Jesus is real and the God of the Bible is real, I've already said aloud, and I would say it to his face if he ever brought his black ass down here again. Look, buddy, I'm not going to worship you. And I don't care what you do to me. I already got a heart condition. I got diabetes. I take like 11 pills every day. Guess what? I'm not scared of you. I have doctors. Anyway, let's move on. Question 3. Where's question 3?
All right, so this is, I want to take this one. If you know God is true but don't agree with the morals of the Bible, was Hitler correct to do what he did? I'm going to just say something about Christianity.
I'll answer this one too.
Hitler, first off, the fact that you need to bring this up or make this comparison just says the worst things about your faith. But since you did, let's go there. Your God is so much worse. So much worse. Hitler was a really bad person, but it requires no sort of supernatural evil to explain. He was a hateful person who ended up with a lot of power and used that power to ruin a lot of lives and upset the global population in ways that we may never recover from. But literally, the history of the planet is filled with stories of powerful, evil people who were just really effed up, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah, Genghis Khan,
But
Adolf Hitler,
right.
Mao.
But the character of God is so much worse than all of them. Does so much more destruction, so much more genocide, but claims to have, according to believers, to have so much more power, to be all loving. And I need to state this clearly. You don't just believe that monster's character exists, you worship that character. And that scares me. That's the thing I think believers need to understand, that they are literally scary. Because you're not just a person who would follow a Hitler because you're paid to. You're not just a person who could be coerced into doing terrible things by the threat of violence from, real human beings with real weapons. You're a person who, of your own volition, chooses to worship and adore and sing praises to and give your money to and insist that everybody else worship and adore this monster. Scary. Genuinely scary human beings.
Okay, I'd like to add a little bit to that. I don't know that Hitler demanded people worship him. Sorry, my phone is going kaput, and I was looking for the charging cable. I don't know that Hitler demanded that people worship him, but the God of the Bible does. Again, when it comes to using your own morality, right? Hitler was wrong, and your God is also wrong. But you're forced to believe that what your God did, based on, we can go right back to that quote from 1 Corinthians 3:18-20. You're forced to believe that your God was in the right. You're forced to believe that. Or sorry, you're basically commanded and indoctrinated to believe that. So Hitler is wrong to kill anyone for his reasons that he used, full stop. He's wrong to cause his own beloved German people to die as a result of his what? Greed, his frustrations, his anger, his power. He's wrong more than once. He's wrong more than in one way. But so is your God.
Yeah.
The worst thing about the God belief is that I can set up a series of tests to prove that your God doesn't exist. Okay? Which makes it even more wrong. If he could come into existence, it would be worse for him, not better. He would look worse, not better.
Yeah, that's the sad part, is they don't realize that actually if they stop believing this, they'd be happier. It'd be better. But look, I don't want to give him more time because I want to let her talk in
Okay.
yeah. All right.
Believe that when the enslaved were faced with some of the most horrible treatment that has ever befallen a group of people in human history, they were forced to cling to any idea that allowed them to retain hope and a sense of community. They did the best that they could with unimaginable hardship and strife. The survivors of enslavement passed their newly adopted beliefs down to their progeny, hoping to pass with these beliefs the strength that would allow them, in turn, to face any of the trials and tribulations of their own lives. Ironically, through to the Reconstruction era, primarily white Christian spaces were still hostile towards Black people, forcing Black worshipers to establish their own churches, particularly below the Mason-Dixon line, because worshiping the right way still didn't mean acceptance into white spaces. Black people were resilient enough to continue on, and the original civil rights
that's the key right there.
Through to the Reconstruction era, primarily white Christian spaces were still hostile towards Black people, forcing Black worshipers to establish their own churches, particularly below the Mason-Dixon line, because worshiping the right way still didn't mean acceptance into white spaces.
And that's what I meant before about how it's never actually mattered. We even had these conversations when I was talking to Mark Reed and maybe even a bit with Mr. Anderson, like the difference in the way Black people have always had to have their own churches, and when our own culture and customs came into those churches, no matter how Christian we were, no matter how biblical people lived, again, no matter how much, you know, Black folks like my family and many of the families that you know about dedicated their lives to God for generation upon generation upon generation, it didn't matter, because at the end of the day, they were still Black people. And that just wasn't going to work. And then part of it is they began to denigrate our traditions the same way they denigrate our music and they say it's hood, and they denigrate our fashion, they denigrate our art. They said that our way of worshiping was not legitimate. And I just think, again, that has to be something both sides are honest about. I remember when COVID happened, of course, a couple of churches locally got together to have a prayer event thing so they could pray away. And it shows you the motivation too, right? Because really, gang, it was a protest, right? Really what it was they were protesting, and they weren't protesting because they wanted, you know, COVID to go away or to help us actually deal with the medical crisis. They were annoyed with the regulations and not being able to get together and not supposed to have gatherings and all that. So they get together, they have a big pray-in, and one of the first things they do is they brag about how, you know, it's a black church and a white church coming together. And they go, you just told on yourself. You just told on yourself, because literally, except to come together to protest safety restrictions so that we don't die. You got a black church, you got a white church, y'all live in the same town, but never the twain shall meet. And that's how it is in America right now, today, y'all. Right now, today, church is one of the most segregated places in America. So tell me what good Christianity has done.
Hey, Pocket Locker, to your point, I don't know how to share this, but you can look it up on YouTube. Maybe you can open another window where Martin Luther King talks about the most segregated hour in America. This sort of bolsters your point. Maybe you can hear it if I play it, or would you prefer to play it?
No, I prefer we don't play. I believe, because we got to keep going.
Okay.
But yeah, that's kind of I know people are familiar with that quote. Hopefully.
Okay.
But yeah, that's still the case, right? All these years
Still
later.
the case.
Yeah. All right, we'll keep going.
Black people were resilient enough to continue on, and the original civil rights movement was housed within the walls of the churches, because those were the only socially acceptable places for the Black community to congregate. At that time, it was a necessity for survival as a Black American to be a member of the Christian community. And I don't condemn the adoption of religion through necessity. However, as the tides have rapidly changed through the turn of the millennium, I believe that the time of necessity has passed. I understand the roots of Christianity within the cultures of descendants of the African diaspora, but I choose to reject it. With the creation of social media and the growing political climate concerning the United States government and its relationship with Christianity, I think that not only is it no longer necessary, but it is no longer possible for Black people to utilize the church as a center for political activism. Some leaders of the...
Oh, we got to pause on that. That's a bomb drop right there. That is a bomb drop. And before you respond, I want to remind y'all of something. This is from 7 years ago. Because when I get on this, y'all, what she was saying 7 years ago is way even more true today, right now, than it was 7 years ago. Go ahead, my one black friend, because I'm.
Well, I think we can see churches losing their grip all over the country, really. Being shut down, buildings starting to decay, right? Because the congregants just aren't there. The rise of the internet and the discussion on the internet and the ability to mobilize people using the internet is really fascinating. And I would almost argue, I bet you can get better diversity at your event if that's what you're hoping for, right? If you use the internet, than if you just say something in the church on the corner. Because then the people from the corner will show, people from the church on the corner might show up, but you need tens of thousands of people, maybe, or hundreds of thousands of people. The internet gives you that instantaneously, virtually, with a tweet. You can have that sort of support instantaneously with your Instagram video. That Servant Mike guy, he's got 350,000 almost subscribers. He puts out a video. Probably the first day, 40,000 people see it. You know? By the way, the POP program has the same potential. We're just not there yet.
So part of where I was going with this is part of the mythology of Black Christianity is that the church played an essential role in the civil rights struggle. And it did, in the sense, like you said, that it was the only place we had that sort of agency, both individually and in many ways collectively. So it did historically. However, we have to admit, we have to recognize, number one, we have to go beyond those needs now. Like we have different struggles than we did then. And you know, so times have changed. But more importantly, we now have to come to a more mature understanding of not just our place within the political world, but our place within the faith. And by that, I mean, when I think about what is Christianity, what does it mean? It's really about the organization. It's like, what are Christians doing? What is the church involved in? And the problem for me is that the church is used as a core of anti-Blackness. Racism in America comes wrapped in a cross. White supremacy in America gets played out as Christian nationalism. So the oppression of Black people, the oppression of LGBTQ people, the oppression of women, the oppression of Muslims, all of these things that we deal with and as marginalized people, it's done by the church. It's done largely by the money powered over interest of Christianity. And what that means is that as those marginalized people, supporting and reifying the power of Christian institutions will literally provide additional leverage to oppress your people, because that's what the brand is now. And I think that's, you know, I want to say unfortunate, but not even, because I really think that's an opportunity to evaluate the claims and then divest, right? To realize, oh, you know what, this isn't really for our people anyway. Oh, and it's not true. We out. Let's go do something else. We won't see that playing out, but that's my take.
Mhm.
All right, I'll let her play.
Black religious community are becoming exactly what their predecessors moved to the churches to
Oh yeah, it looks like they
escape.
got time out. Okay.
Discriminatory and spiteful to those whom they do not understand. I wonder what would have happened if the enslaved had been presented with a humanist doctrine after the terrors of Middle Passage into the New World. Would it have made a difference in how they organized and ultimately fought to end chattel slavery? I grew up with a second degree of separation from religion and Christianity. I was born in Greenbelt, Maryland, my mother's only child and the fourth of my father's, who had been previously married to my older sibling's devout mother before their separation. I spent most of my adolescence in Northern Virginia, a unique place that prides itself for being too suburban and affluent to consider itself the rural South, but too historically conservative to be called the North. During my youth, Christianity was always on the periphery of my existence. My mother and father both, in their own ways, seemed apathetic to the idea of religion. When my parents gave me instead of religion was a moral compass anchored in self-confidence. They taught me to respect other people and myself. They taught me that becoming educated would be the most important endeavor of my entire life. And they taught me to stand up for myself in the face of adversity and discrimination. My parents provided the foundation for me to flourish and to have the strength to enter the adult world with poise and confidence, and they were able to do it without any added religious pressures. I was only ever in church services a few times, and always at the suggestion of a second-degree relative. I was given the choice to attend services when I was around 9 years old, and I, obviously, opted out. For what could be more boring to a child than sitting still and listening to someone monotonously drone on about things that don't make any sense? There were a few biblical passages in aging, cracked frames strewn about the house that I grew up in, remnants of my late stepmother, and I would glance at them from time to time. They always put me on edge, but I could never determine why. As I've gotten older, I've realized that what made me so skeptical when I saw these seemingly inoffensive messages of love and divinity and acceptance was that they didn't align with the Christianity I saw in real life.
There you go.
Pause
The
it.
Christianity that I saw
Pause
was
it.
in the
That ain't that are you person.
Yeah, I
Pay
got
attention
timed
to what
out.
she just. Oh, did they?
Yeah, so they might still be watching. Go ahead.
Okay. Are you, if you're still watching, pay attention to what she just said. The Christianity pasted on the walls for everybody to see wasn't the Christianity that was being lived around her. There was a difference. So, part of the issues that many non believers have with the Christian religion is that it's two faced, is that it's not sincere.
Right.
Right?
Right.
There's the
Right.
Christian people hold themselves up to be, and then the one they truly are. They fail to be the one that's up there on the pedestal, shouting the good news of Jesus Christ and performing as much of the word as humanly possible. That's a fantasy, right? That most of them don't even have. I've praised some Mormon missionaries that came through my neighborhood because those guys are serious. They're giving up everything and they go preach, right? Different places in the world, sometimes here in the United States, they give up everything. Most Christians won't even give up TV, right? They won't give up watching Handmaid's Tale to read a few chapters from Ezekiel or Leviticus. They won't do it.
Right.
So here's a consistent problem, and I'll go back to Gary Habermas. I love quoting this. I think it's so beautiful. It's probably the pinnacle of wisdom for someone to say, as he said when he debated Ken Humphreys, it is difficult for a man to live up to his own philosophy.
Yeah. And again, it's
Keep
just
that
one
in
of those
mind,
things.
Ari.
It's just one of those things that I don't understand how it doesn't bother them. Like, at the end of the day, they're the ones having the wool pull over their eyes. They're the one going along with
No,
this, and it doesn't.
pulling the wool
They're pulling the wool
over
over their own eyes.
their eyes.
Exactly.
vindictive stares from the devout relatives of my half-siblings during my youth and the careful way they spoke to me, as if bastard child were stamped on my forehead. It is in the news, Fox News. It is in the evangelical protesters who came to my college campus in Westchester, New York last Wednesday, holding spiteful, grammatically incorrect signs and insisting that our liberal LGBTQ-friendly student body had a one-way ticket to hell. Even some of my members of my own family are guilty of this holier-than-thou attitude that leaves my blood boiling. They act as if their Christianity somehow makes them incapable of fault. Not only that, but they act as if the faults of others have some sort of direct connection to their spirituality, or lack thereof. It's as if the steps to becoming a good person can sometimes appear to be hopelessly intertwined with devout Christian belief. How can people who have experienced marginalization themselves be able to project it onto others so easily? The answer is painfully simple. Across cultures, religion is a tool of control. In the December 1992 issue of Free Thought Today, the late Dr. Michael Hakim, for whom my honor is named, wrote, "Christianity provided a system of thought, a climate of opinion that made possible the dehumanization of whole categories of people. Religious indoctrination has caused the deaths of millions of people throughout all of human history, all in the name of a faceless chameleon God whose will aligns with the will of those men who wish to control others. I understand that people need comfort when the worst comes into their lives. We all want to feel accepted in communities of like-minded people, and religious centers can be places of healing and support for some. But I believe that secular spaces just like this one can be just as supportive and just as rewarding. Human beings are naturally curious, and we seek solace from the fear of an inevitable death. But to dwell on the possibility of the end of our individual existence is to ignore the plights that exist in the world around us. We all want to ascribe meaning to our lives, to find a purpose. We want to be able to name the source from which we came. I don't condemn spirituality or the belief in a greater force outside of ourselves, nor do I altogether vilify organized religious practice. But I do believe that morality comes from within, and not from a devotion to a series of antiquated religious practices, regardless of their origin. I believe that true purpose can be established here during our time on earth. We each hold the means to our own destinies. I believe that I can be a good person, a person of value, and a Black person without claiming a religious affiliation. I am, and always will be, an unapologetic Black atheist. Thank you.
Now look, y'all. I'm gonna just keep it real. I think her and her family might have been the only Black people in that audience. And you know, that's something that I want to really see be different. Like I think that a lot of people on the skeptic side of things are also progressive people, right? And they're usually against things like racism and misogyny and homophobia and things like that. And I think there's been just a genuine push to try to create atheist spaces and you know, create this organized push against religion. But I sometimes fear that the the diversity, equity, and inclusion values that are articulated are not prioritized. And I know it feels hard, but it feels like we're here. Like I think for me, like when I first got out here and I didn't feel like there was a lot of diversity in the atheist community. I didn't know any other Black atheists. I felt like I was in an online space that was predominantly white. Still feel that way. But over time, I've definitely met enough people to realize that we're out here and we're not really that hard to find. It just takes a little bit of effort. And so I just want to see some more of that effort, especially because it's important. Like, it matters that if religion is something that's not true, and especially if religion is something that's harmful, then freedom from religion is a benefit. It's a resource. It's something that has tremendous value, and you don't want that to become something that becomes another source of inequality. So yeah, that's my take on that. But I definitely want to commend them for doing this and for giving the award, for going out and getting the resources to make it a continual or perpetual award. It's definitely cool that they put this like in their, I think it's in their magazine and stuff, which I've actually been subscribed to. So I think it's Skeptic Inquirer. There's a couple of skeptic magazines that you can subscribe to support these organizations. But yeah, we just need more diversity in the community. Go ahead, my one Black friend.
Well, I'll agree that we certainly need more. I guess it's there, but we don't know it. I think we do live in an environment here in the United States where many people are quietly atheist, quiet atheists.
Quietly, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
and they think that's a safety issue, and it may be. They
Yes.
also think it's a privacy issue, and it may be. I've
Yes.
joked. I've joked here on Hot Program, if some Klansmen were to burn a cross in my yard, should I put it out or just kind of just let it go? Because I'm not a Christian. Like, in a way, this is offensive, and in a way, it's not offensive. You know, because I don't think Jesus was real. I'm a
Right.
mythicist for that matter. But yeah, I think a lot of people aren't willing to take that step to be vocal. It's a live and let live approach that is enough for a lot of people, right? They aren't being hurt enough, in their opinion, by established religions to speak up and say, you know what, folks, I think you got that part wrong. You're certainly free to celebrate your beliefs, but you got that part wrong.
Well, see, I think that's part of the problem. So I think part of the issue is, to be honest, a lot of the way atheism has been going lately, or I guess if you look at like the new atheist movement on or whatever, is very something for like pretty well off, well educated, well resourced white people. And in that sense, their freedom from religion represents something different. It represents a sort of intellectual freedom. It might even represent for many of them political transformation, um, personal transformation, but it doesn't have its foot on their necks the same way it does in other communities, because nothing has its foot on their necks like in that regard. And that's where the sort of interact, that's why it's like, to me, that's what I mean. I want people to be more serious about it, because there's a sense of desperation I have. You understand? Like, it's like our people are already messed up. We're already under resourced. We're already undereducated. Um, and and people want to talk about culture. Like, that's the problem. Like, let's talk about culture. Like, these people who want to pretend racism isn't a problem want to blame our issues on our culture. At the same time, again, the way these religions poison our culture is a product of that which was foisted upon us by our enslavers. And so that hurts. Like, just little stuff, like the fact that a lot of people don't have serious ideas about medicine, or they still are into like what we would consider faith healing, or they buy in easily to conspiracies, or they're less likely to pursue careers in medicine or science. If those are real harmful effects of religion, then people should be concerned about those effects harming marginalized groups. Um, and so, yeah, I just that's part of, I think, why I want to see more diversity in those organizations and in those spaces, because then more of us can bring that perspective, that can gain more momentum, get people more serious about it, and then start bringing critical thinking and secular humanism into communities that currently aren't talking about it and don't have access to that way of thinking. So it's just really sad.
Well, I think we have to admit we've come a lot further, I think, with the advent of the internet than we would have without it. I
Oh,
think
hell
without
yeah.
without the internet, I don't know if I'd be an atheist now. I think I would not have challenged my beliefs. Like, the internet's made it rather convenient for me to challenge my beliefs, because I can find so much information without going to to a library. You know, many of the books,
Hmm.
I have a book cabinet with lots of books in it, but I have even more on my iPad that I was able to download for free from the internet. You know, ancient debates on religion, not just modern stuff.
Mm,
Ancient books about other religions, Diodorus Siculus and what is Herodotus and things like that. I don't have a copy of that physically.
mm.
I have it virtually on my iPad.
Here's what's interesting. I was
So,
thinking there. I totally agree that the internet is the huge thing in changing the momentum. But I think even the internet is segregated in so many ways. And I know people are thinking, but Jay, like it's ubiquitous. Everybody has devices. Everybody has smartphones. I think there's, not strictly speaking, but in some ways, two internets: an internet of ideas and an internet of people. And the internet of people is much more ubiquitous and democratized than the internet of ideas. So what do I mean by that? Everybody might have smartphones, but what are a lot of people doing with their smartphones? The internet of people is you're texting, you're messaging, you're on social media, you're gaming, you're using the internet to connect with other people, right? But you're not using necessarily the internet to read or to listen to podcasts or to even, watch YouTube videos about important topics or to engage in conversations about important topics or to access different news sources, right? A lot of us, when we say the internet helps us, because we read a lot of different news sources and we watch, we got to think about, not everybody is using the internet the same way. And if you think about the internet of ideas, the internet of ideas is far more segregated. If you look at who's represented in mainstream media, who's represented in intellectual spaces, whose books are read, who's on larger podcasts, that's not so reflective of diversity in the overall population as necessarily who's on social media. So even like right now, like when you look at something like the narrative around Israel and Palestine, a lot of people who are like pro-Palestinian and stuff like that, like they're participating in this way, almost the flip, like the internet of people is helping that. It's because there's all these different perspectives that they're seeing on social media, right? Which is sort of butting heads with the people who are trying to control the internet of ideas and the mainstream media and like what they're trying to focus on. So these things do come into tension with one another. But yeah, just something to think about. But yeah, do you want to give us closing thoughts?
If you know anybody that works at Instagram, see about getting them to take off the feature that automatically disables my comment if I say something. Let people report it if I say something awful. Don't let your algorithm do it, because I can see things like the N-word written by several people. That's still there, but I might have written something very encouraging, which I often do, and it flags it and takes it down. But on this topic, I think we covered it pretty well here. I think it's definitely a good thing for us. If you haven't come out as an atheist yet, don't be afraid to, of course, take things at your own pace. I would encourage you to develop a support network as a fairly anonymous person prior to taking that plunge to just being out and out atheist. Like, I'll wear my Antelope Valley Free Thinker shirt or my Atheist Experience shirt when I travel. And occasionally somebody even knows what a free thinker is. They look at me because most people don't know.
Right.
It's just I'm just some dude in a red shirt. But take your time when you publicly transition into being very public about it. You don't have to rush, but you could still not admit to being an atheist and challenge the ideas when you know they're wrong. You can still do that. One of the best methods, if this RU person, if I had said, hey, here's my email, just email me these questions. And if you have a podcast and you're just trying to get a guest on your podcast to talk about atheism because you want to ask these same questions, let's do it that way, right? I would be happy to explain why what that person believes is wrong. But it would be better if I use the Socratic method and question them why they thought it was right. Right? And ask them questions about the things that I think are problematic. Maybe they will change my mind with their answers. Maybe that's the strength of their arguments, or maybe they will change their minds based on their answers. That's what happened to me. Based on my answers, I had to change my mind about whether or not I thought the biblical God existed. I had to change my mind about whether or not I thought that Jesus of Nazareth was a real dude as described in the Bible. I had to change my mind. I believe that God was up there. I believe that Jesus was up there with him and had come down here to set the record straight. I no longer believe either of those.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would just say, like, you have the same rights as everybody else. You know, at the end of the day, a lot of times I think we don't see ourselves as having the same kind of right to our truth, or the same kind of right to our expression. Um, you know, in my own way, I don't even see myself as being that confrontational to religion. I just see it's out there. It's like out there all over the place. And I think if it's out there ubiquitously, then it's okay to respond to it. Like, they put out a lot of stuff. You know, I have thoughts about what they put out. You know, if they got the right to put it out there, I have a right to respond to it. So, you know, that's important. And then, like you said, your story is your own, so you don't owe anybody anything. You know, if all you know is you don't believe, you know, you do have the right to keep that to yourself. But if you choose not to keep it to yourself, you know, you don't owe anybody any explanation or
You do not have to defend it.
anything
No.
like that. Yeah, you could just it could just be who you are and where you're at. But yeah, appreciate y'all. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Please like the video. If you haven't, please subscribe to the channels. There are links in the description if you want to support. Please leave us a comment if you're watching later. Let us know what you thought of the Nadia Duncan's Unapologetic Black Atheist talk, or what you think of the question of the day. Are atheists marginalized? But yeah, otherwise, be good to yourselves
And each other.
All right, gang, we'll see you next time.